Hello. I know this video is going to go up late. I apologize. I kids are out of school, daycare is closed. I've been doing nothing but taking care of small children for the last couple of days. My 2-year-old is literally asleep over there. If she wakes up, the video's over, and nothing's going up today. Sorry. Anyways, first video of the year, I wanted to do something short and modest, and we're going to do a bourbon and a Laird's. Oh, you say, we're going to do Laird's and a bourbon? Are we going to see a reasonably priced apple brandy? Absolutely curb stomp, some overpriced, overhyped corn juice? Not exactly. I am going to review this. Part of the Laird's Barrel Aged series. This is a straight Kentucky bourbon whiskey finished in apple brandy barrels. Now this is one of 3 releases that Laird's has done recently, where they basically sourced whiskey from other distilleries and then thrown them in their own apple brandy barrels for a quick finish. There's the bourbon here, there's a corn whiskey, and there's an Irish whiskey. I decided to go with this one. And so let's get some notes on the table, and I'm going to add some water and tell you basically why I bought this thing, and then we'll come back to it. All right. Laird's bourbon finished in apple brandy barrels. Try to get this lined up. Okay. Bottled circa 2023. This is noted to be a 5-year-old. It's in print. It's too small for you to really see, but it's there. 5 years old, 45% alcohol by volume. And on the nose, I'm really getting a lot of Heaven Hill. In fact, if this isn't Heaven Hill, I would be not completely shocked, but I would be a little surprised. Actually, there was a kind commenter in a previous Laird's video noted that Laird's does use mostly ex-Heaven Hill casks for their aging, so I would not be shocked if they also managed to source some bourbon from Heaven Hill for this little series. Yeah, so it's Heaven Hill mostly, and the appliness is really kind of hiding in the corners. It's that being said, it's a damn nice Heaven Hill. So we're getting like fall leaves, like autumn, dry leaves, that kind of smell. Lots of dry twigs too. A little bit of like graininess, fresh oatmeal. Fresh oatmeal you made with some heavier honey, like a forest honey, like bitter honey. A little bit of dried cherry in there as well, vanilla, sawdust, but it's not like cooperage sawdust. This is like the kind of sawdust you get in like a reclaimed wood mill. It's that really, really kind of old wood in the air kind of smell. There's a kind of tea note, but it's more like old tea bags than like fresh tea leaves or brewed tea or anything like that. And yeah, the Laird's effect is it's there, but it's really kind of bringing up the rear. It's really just kind of adding little bits of detail. So apple cheese, it's a Lithuanian thing. Go look it up. It's basically boiled down apple. It's delicious. Go to your local Lithuanian bakery and buy some apple cheese. Little potpourri in there, but nice. Cider vinegar. And that's mostly it. It feels like the Laird's barrel character is really just kind of integrating with the rest of it. It's really making this seem far more complex and dense than the 5-year age statement would otherwise warrant. I mean, really, it just smells like a damn good bourbon. Some cinnamon stick in there, a little bit of like kind of herbaceous, a little bit of light leafiness, like a parsley thing. Yeah, it's nice. And this is kind of like, sometimes this is what you want with a finish, right? Like you just want that little kiss of extra wood to give it more depth and character than it would have otherwise had. And it's kind of working here. All right, let's see what happens on the palate. Again, it's mostly just darn good Heaven Hill with a little bit of like appley detail, but you got to pay attention for it. You got to kind of. I would guess I wouldn't pick up on the finishing factor here if I didn't know in advance. Like it's a very subtle effect. It wasn't even that long a finish. I mean they say on the back this was aged in 5 years in new charred oak, and it's got a 5-year age statement. So this had to have been finished less than a year. This was months in the brandy barrel. Other than that, let's get some more detail. A lot like the nose, twigs, dead leaves, fall leaves, black tea, overstewed Liptons, but nice. Some vanilla bean, that kind of reclaimed wood sawdust thing. Orange blossom honey, maybe. A little bit of like a citrus peel note, maybe like a little bit of lemon peel in there. Cinnamon, allspice, dried cherry, oatmeal again. That sort of grainy hint. Let me go looking for appley notes. Yeah, it's just this little halo of like a little apple core, like a couple of fresh flowers, especially on the finish. The finish is actually, again, very, very, very good for a 5-year-old at 45%. This hangs on. It's quite dry, with a nice halo of dried leaves and that little hint of apple core. Good mouthfeel, good mouth length. This is not stopping short in the front of my mouth. This is kind of like covering my whole palate. This is nice. I'm actually. I mean, I wasn't expecting crap. I wasn't expecting something that would be, you know, kind of legit, and this is kind of legit. All right, I'm going to give it some water, which is the dangerous part. I'm not going to give it like a full squirt. We're going to give it like a 3/4 squirt, 2/3 squirt. Come back to that in a second. So, why did I buy this? Well, part of it is because, like, no one else on YouTube is reviewing these things, which is a little bit crazy because we're talking about a bourbon, a source bourbon, but still coming out of America's oldest licensed distilling firm, right? Like that should be a thing. But you look around for YouTube reviews of this and the other two of the barrel age series. They just aren't there. No one seems to have picked up on this. But there's other things about this that kind of interested me too. Part of it was, I will confess, the price, right? This is the basic shelf price for this seems to be around $40, and you will see it regularly on sale for considerably less than that. And that's not super duper cheap, but it's in the genre of like finished bourbon. That's pretty darn cheap. Like most of what you'll see around that price point is stuff I don't really like. Things with finishes I really don't want to try. Questionable vermouths, like ex red wine casks. Not to say that ex red wine maturation can't work, but as a finish, as like a quick dip, you might run into some problems there. So this is this is relatively inexpensive, and the finish is actually interesting because it's still American oak, right? That's what Laird's does. They do American oak, but it's this alternative spirit, which makes it kind of really interesting. It's something that gives me hope for the finished bourbon category, which isn't really even technically bourbon, right? It's whiskey specialty. Which, mark my words, when the public loses faith in the integrity of American spirits, it's going to be due to the abuse happening in this category, and the fact that that abuse is being placed on the shelves right next to stuff that is honestly made. Anyhow, I will not get into that. I will not get into that rant. But yeah, so that's sort of why I wanted to try this. Weird experiment from a company I like very much. Like, it's Laird's, right? They aren't going to be just sloshing some apple brandy around a cask they had lying around, doing like a loose dump and then putting cheap low rye MGP in there and then selling. That's not really they're actually going to be doing the apple brandy finished thing. And so yeah, I wanted to try this, and I am kind of sort of impressed. That being said, we're at the dangerous part of this, which is where I've added some water. And the problem with finishes, even when they're well done, is like, what happens when you give them half an hour of air? What happens when you give them a couple of drops of water? Like, a lot of the time it will start to bring out like weird, confused, woody astringencies, especially in the finish. Even in the best case, a lot of the time is the finish will just kind of blow off, and you'll be left with whatever the hell was left was there before they tried to add that extra cask effect. But hey, sometimes it works out. So we're gonna come back to this, see if it holds up even under the pressure of a squirt of water. And that's kind of why I do this, right? It's not like I'm drinking, my spirits with water all the time. No, of course not. But for the purposes of evaluation, I think it's important because, it gives you some idea of where the spirit is going to go over time when you're halfway through the bottle. It gives you a wider impression of the quality of what the hell you're buying, right? That's why I add a little bit of water and come back to it, right? So you can drink it any old way you want. All right. Anyways, let's get back to this. Finish the video before my 2-year-old wakes up. On the nose, there we go. Now the appley goodness is starting to come out. Apple tea, Turkish apple tea. You ever have it? Not the stuff that is kind of crappy and comes in like a powder form. Not that, like the properly made version of that. That's kind of what's coming through on the nose now. I mean, it's still like 80 or 90% darn good Heaven Hill. But the appley notes are really starting to assert themselves now that I've added a little bit of water. So that's interesting. Often it goes the other way. The finish just kind of dissipates with water. Here it's kind of like reasserted itself. See what happens on the palate. Give me a second. This is tricky because with the addition of water, the finish does get much more dry. I mean, the dry finish on this was kind of it was one of the things I like about it. Kind of an aggression on the finish that goes beyond its age. But when you add a little bit of water, it's almost a step too far. I'm trying to decide. It's a little bit astringent. It's a little bit bitter. I don't know if it goes too far for me. Let me try this one more time. It's right there. It's kind of right on that edge where if it was just a little bit more bitter and astringent, I would have to give this a minus, but no, it's still holding up. I would still have this neat though, but be aware if you do add a little bit of water to this. I'm guessing the same thing would happen if you gave this half an hour on the counter. The finish does kind of get a little bit hairy. I think so. I still like this. It's just a very, very good classic Kentucky bourbon with these little hints of other things going on. More appliness on the afterwater? No, not really. Not really. It's still mostly just Heaven Hill. Just a more kind of dry and aggressive Heaven Hill with those little hints floating around. Yeah, this is solid stuff. If you can get this, especially around like $30, I think it's well worth a grab. I will give this 84 points. 84 points, especially. Man, I kind of wish I reviewed this back in the fall. Like, it really is a good, like, just fall dram, if you want to put it that way. And yeah, that is the review. 84 points for the Laird's Straight Kentucky Bourbon Whiskey finished in apple brandy barrels. Yeah, just watch the water, okay? That is what I got. Thanks for watching, and cheers. I'll have something fun for you on Friday.